But today, we are going to continue our summer sermon series in Proverbs, and who am I becoming? Who am I becoming? Who are you becoming? We're going to look at the generous man versus the stingy man today. The generous man versus the stingy man. Are you becoming more generous or more stingy as you get older? Are you more generous with your time than you were, say, last year or a few years ago? Are you more generous with your abilities and sharing your abilities with people? We were in the sound booth a little bit ago, and it was suggested that we needed a connect group for bathroom remodeling. Because some people are good at that. We don't have that, but are you more generous with sharing your abilities than you were last year? Or are you stingier with your time and your abilities than you were? Hoarding your time. Now, we know what hoarders are when they hoard their stuff in their house. But when you're stingy with sharing your time or your abilities, you are hoarding your time and abilities to yourself. Do you serve less than you did 10 years ago or last year? And everyone's favorite question, are you more generous with your finances this year than you were last year or a few years back? Our text today is Proverbs 11:24. Proverbs 11:24. It says, one person gives freely, yet gains more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Everyone likes having money in our pockets, that's for sure. But are you generous or are you stingy? When someone thinks about you, do they think, boy, they're generous. They serve a lot. They are always at something to help. Are you a giver of your time, abilities, and resources? Or are you a hoarder of your time, abilities, and resources? Well, I thought I'd help you determine if you are generous or stingy. So I've prepared a graphic that lists everyone at the Mission Church and how they have served in the last year, or if they have served. And I didn't stop there. I spoke to Wendy Catapano and I said, I need a graphic of everyone that's given generously in the last year. And so I thought we'd put those graphics up on the LED wall. Let me get out of your way. All right, Priscilla, you can hit the button and show us who has been generous and who has been stingy. Oh, so sorry. We're experiencing technical issues and your names will not be up on the LED wall. But the thought of having your name up on the wall or not having your name on the wall, how did that feel? Were you nervous? Yes, Ryan, we'll meet later. But that is just that feeling of, oh no, my name is going to be up there, or oh no, my name won't be up there. That is a help for you today to consider. Are you being generous or are you being stingy? Am I becoming more generous as I get older, or am I becoming more stingy as I get older? In God's economy, the economy of this world is put on its head. Proverbs 11:24, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. In the Message, it says, the world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. Why would someone who is generous gain more when they are actually losing by being generous? And why would someone that is tight-fisted and withholds be moving more towards poverty? It seems counterintuitive, yet that is what God does. His economy, his blessings, his favor, his provision is an upside-down economy and viewpoint to the world. And yet, for the Christian, it's right side up. One of the greatest examples of generosity in the scriptures is not a wealthy group of believers, but the exact opposite. The Macedonian churches were believers in Philippi, Thessalonica, and Berea. And in 2 Corinthians, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he uses the Macedonian churches as a model for the church in Corinth, and now a model for us here at the Mission Church in Holmes, New York, of what generosity should look like for the believer. And as we keep Proverbs 11:24 in view, we'll look at the Macedonia churches as a generosity example. And then, for a stingy example, we'll look at a man named Nabal in 1 Samuel 25. So first, generosity flows from God's grace. 2 Corinthians 8:1 and 2. Paul is writing to the church in Corinth and using the Macedonians as an example. And now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. Paul doesn't compliment the personalities of the people in the Macedonian churches. He doesn't congratulate them on their financial planning, but instead he focuses on how God's grace transformed them into generous people. The believers in the Macedonian churches were not generous because they had a bucket load of extra money. They didn't have a lot of disposable income, as we would say today. But it was the grace of God flowing through them that their generosity was birthed from. Instead of simply praising generosity, Paul attributes their giving to God's grace. It's not something they did. It's something that God's grace through them has accomplished. It wasn't merely human accomplishment. Look at what I gave. Look at how I served. Look at what I do. But no, Paul says true generosity for the believer flows through us because of the grace of God in our lives. Grace is the enabling power of God to live out your life. Grace is the enabling power of God to live out your God-centered life and your life of faith. Without grace, where would we be? Not here. Maybe where we were before we knew God. But because of his amazing grace, we can have that grace flow through us. We can be conduits of God's grace and be generous one to another. Generosity is a result of experiencing God's grace and one of the evidences of spiritual maturity in the lives of believers. Are you spiritually mature? Yes, I am. Well, how is that going with the generosity meter in your life? Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. When generosity flows from the grace of God, it is actually a gift back to God. The grace flows through you, it's a gift back to God, and then that blessing flows back to you from God. It's a wonderful upside down, right side right cycle from God. That is God's economy. But in contrast to generosity flowing through you from the grace of God, stinginess flows from self-preservation. Proverbs 28:26. Those who trust in themselves are fools. That was worth the price of admission today. There was no price of admission, but Those who trust in themselves are fools. We all know people that focus only on themselves. As Pastor Gregg would say, don't point to the next person next to you. And they have that mentality, it's all about me and me getting ahead and my needs. And what about me? Forget about them. What about me? For example, of stinginess, we look at Nabal in 1 Samuel 25. A certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel. Now that's Carmel, the city of Judah, not Carmel in Putnam County here. But if you want to apply it to yourself, that's fine too. This man was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. He had his name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, just like our Abigail Speyer over here. But her husband, now careful, Abigail, when you're going to get engaged. Her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. Now, he was from the line of Caleb, who was an incredible man of God, but he had turned away from that and became surly and mean in his dealings. And as we read in Proverbs 28:26, those who trust in themselves are fools. Nabal's name literally means fool. His mother named him fool. That's not right, Ryan. And today, right, people, when they name their child, they look up the meaning and the etymology and all of that. Nabal's mother just named him fool. And unfortunately, he's lived up to his name. Stingy people are all about, number one, themselves. People should be giving to me, not me giving to others. Why should I share? I worked hard for it. It's mine. I earned it. And if I don't look out for me, who is going to look out for me? So too bad for you, I'm not sharing. That's a stingy person, whether they voice that or not. That's a stingy person. Stinginess flows from self-preservation. And then when we read in 1 Samuel, David had had an interaction previously with Nabal's shepherds. They had camped near David, Nabal's shepherds had camped near David and his men, and David didn't do anything to those shepherds. He could have easily taken all of their things, all of their sheep, but no, he left them alone, and he didn't do anything, take anything from them. Now, time has passed, and now we're in chapter 25, and David now has sent messengers to Nabal and said, could you provide some food for my men that are going to be near you? And by the way, let me remind you that I didn't do anything to your guys when they were near me. I didn't do any kind of misdeeds or take all of their things. But Nabal, true to his name, which means fool, thank you, and his reputation as surly and mean in his dealings tells us his response to David in verses 10 and 11. Nabal answered David's servants when they came to him and said, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where?" Stingy. Because it's all about him. It's my bread. It's my shearers. It's my food. It's all about me. Why should I do anything for them? Stinginess is all about the I and me and keeping everything for ourselves. And that never ends well, brothers and sisters. Proverbs 28:26, those who trust in themselves are fools. Secondly, generosity flows from a place of joy in the Lord. First, we looked at that it flows from grace, the grace of God in our lives. Now, generosity flows from a place of joy in the Lord. Proverbs 10:28. The prospect of the righteous is joy, but the hopes of the wicked come to nothing. Looking again at the Macedonian churches, 2 Corinthians 8, now verses 2 and 3. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability. Normally, we think when life is hard, I'll give less. Not in God's economy. The Macedonian believers didn't harbor bitterness. They didn't have this victim mentality. Woe is me, look at all of the trials and the poverty that I have. But instead, they looked to the joy of the Lord. They didn't have a, I need help, why should I help someone else perspective. What's someone done for me lately? Why should I share what I have? The Macedonian believers were impoverished under severe trial and extreme poverty. And their response? Overflowing joy that birthed generosity. Rich generosity. Full generosity. This wasn't middle-class giving. This was sacrificial giving. This was sacrificial giving, not I have a few bucks left over. Let me see what I can do. It was even beyond their ability. Their joy was not in their possessions, not because of what they had, but because of the joy in knowing whose they were, the Lord's. And the Lord takes care of his own. Nehemiah 8:10, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And when we recognize who God is in our life and that he has saved us, we should have joy unspeakable and full of glory spring up within inside of us, not stinginess. 1 Peter 1:8. Continuing now with verse 4, entirely on their own, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the Lord's people. They earnestly pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the Lord's people. They said, please, please, we have to give. We must give. Out of the joy in our heart, we're pleading with you, Paul, to let us give. That's what the Macedonian churches, the believers, did to Paul. When's the last time you went up to Pastor Gregg and said, Pastor Gregg, please, let me give more. Please, take a longer offering time. I say that is never from that response. Allow us to give, please. Allow me to use our resources more. But instead, oftentimes we might hear, I know, here they go again about serving again and being generous with your time. Oh, no, they're talking about money again. Enough already with the giving. Maybe that feels a little bit more familiar to you. It shouldn't, if that feels more familiar to you. Proverbs 21:15. It is a joy for the just to do justice. Generosity flows from joy and produces joy in the giver. 2 Corinthians 9:7. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. The Macedonian believers here, they weren't compelled. They weren't lock all the doors till you give. I heard a church do that. They locked all the doors and said, no, we need more. And no one could leave till they came up with more. Just saying. These sanctuary doors don't lock. I looked into it. Generosity flows from a place of joy in God. And I want to give. On the other hand, stinginess flows from focusing on current circumstances. And while you would be thinking stingy would help your economic condition. It actually does the opposite. It has the opposite effect with God. He's like, oh, you're going to hold back? Watch me hold back. Proverbs 28:22. The stingy are eager to get rich and unaware that poverty awaits them. The stingy are eager to get rich and unaware that poverty awaits them. In God's economy, hoarding things to yourself doesn't reap wealth. It's a recipe for loss. Being stingy points to a much bigger problem, a much bigger issue. It's a matter of the heart. Our text again says, Proverbs 11:24, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. God can't bless what you hold with a tight fist. God can't bless what you hold with a tight fist. He's looking for an open hand to bless and to use. Well, I don't have enough. Let someone that has plenty and has gobs of disposable income give. Those that are stingy look at their current circumstance and situation and rationalize that they don't have it to give. They allow their current financial position to shape their decisions and interactions instead of coming from a God-trusting position. A God-trusting position is one of faith and joy and love and peace. That's what those Macedonian church believers had. They had love, they had joy, they had peace, they had hope. But looking at your needs instead of the needs of others is a position of despair, surliness, ask Nabal, and the complete opposite of joy. Thirdly, generosity flows from giving yourself to God first and then to others. Continuing with the Macedonian believers, 2 Corinthians 8:5, Paul writes, and they exceeded our expectations. When's the last time you exceeded the expectations of your finances and of your church? They gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and then by the will of God also to us. True generosity is giving ourselves all the way to God, not holding back, not being stingy with our relationship with God. We must give our whole selves to Him, aligning our lives with Him and then aligning His will for our lives with us. And that always includes giving generously with your time, with your abilities, and with your resources. When we give ourselves to God, lock, stock, and barrel, when we put God first in our lives, when we give ourselves over to God completely, wholeheartedly, out of that flows generosity that exceeds all expectations. As followers of God, first and foremost, we must reorient ourselves. We must reorient ourselves and have loose attachments to the things of this world. Don't hold on to the things of this world with a tight fist. The saying is, you can't take it with us. It's true. And who knows what your kids will do with it. They're going to pull up a dumpster. I'm just saying. John and I, when we moved up here back in 91, we had to buy a dining room chandelier. And so we went to this electrical lighting place in the city of Poughkeepsie, and it was the whole big showroom. And we're looking, and I said to John, oh, that's the chandelier. Because one day when we're gone, our kids will fight over who gets that chandelier. They don't want that chandelier. They don't want your china if that was your grandmother's. They don't want it. Why do we hold on to the things of this world so tightly? Give ourselves first to God and then to others. Prioritize God and His kingdom. Matthew 6:33, but seek first His kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. That's God's economy. Seek God first. There are so many here at the Mission Church who have given themselves over and over to serving with no compensation. I think of Pete Samlowski. I think of Brother Tom. I think of Priscilla, who's in the booth. And so many of you that give yourselves over to God. And I'm not even talking about money at this moment. But we should be all in with God and then with others, it says. Let's serve him with all of our hearts. Plead with Jenny Pendoffel to be a children's worker. What do you think, Jenny? She's right in the back there. The Macedonians pleaded to be generous. Go ahead, plead with Jenny. Please, please, let me be in the nursery. Please, please, I beg you. The Lord will reward you. It'll come back to you in blessings that you can't even fathom. So generosity flows from giving yourself to God and then to others. However, stinginess disregards God. Proverbs 14:31. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. Proverbs 23:6-8. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave his delicacies. For he is the kind of person who was always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. The stingy man withholds generosity, and that is not merely a financial strategy, but a byproduct of a corrupted heart. Contempt for God, a heart of stone towards God and to those who are made in his image, which is everyone. The stingy man disregards God and can't figure out why he can't get ahead. And the cherry on top, the word says that if he has a stinky, begrudging attitude. Stingy people, they're not full of joy. They have begrudging attitudes towards everyone and everything. They might have you over and say, yeah, come on over. But then it's like they're doing you a favor to have you over. That's stingy. Let's be gracious and generous with our fellowship, with our time, with our service, with our resources. Haggai, chapter 1. Have you read Haggai lately? That's a great book. Haggai chapter 1, verses 5-9. Now this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. Thank you for putting on clothes, by the way. You earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it. The money just seems to just flow right out through your fingers. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. Go up into the mountains and bring down timber and build my house so that I may take pleasure in it and be honored, says the Lord. You expected much, but see, it turned out to be little. What you brought home, I blew away, God says. Why, declares the Lord Almighty? Because of my house, which remains a ruin, while each of you is busy with your own house. Right to the heart there. Haggai, it says, give careful thought to your ways 7 times in a very short book. But why am I earning money and I'm not getting ahead? Because the priorities are backwards. God must be first in our lives, not self. Lastly, in comparing the generous man and the stingy man, the generous man follows through with his intentions. Proverbs 4:26. Give careful thought to the paths of your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Those that are generous follow through on their intentions. Generosity needs hands and feet, not just words. Generosity demands follow-through. Intentions aren't generous. Intentions don't serve others. Intentions don't share their abilities or their resources. Following through on your intentions is the generosity litmus test. We have been reading what Paul wrote to the Corinthians regarding the generosity of the Macedonian churches, but now Paul speaks directly to the mission church, to the church in Corinth, and he says this in 2 Corinthians 8:10-11. And here is my judgment about what is best for you in this matter, Paul writes. Last year, you were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. Now, finish the work, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it, according to your means. Intentions aren't generous. Following through on your intention is generosity. Most of you gave and pledged to our benevolence fund back in June when we had that special offering. Thank you for giving, and for those that pledged, thank you for fulfilling those pledges, and not just your intention, but actually completing it. And I have a couple of things I just want to share with you. Cuba, I think many of you have heard on the news, they are in desperate straits in Cuba. And we have a connection. Pastor Gregg and some of our teams have been down to Cuba, had ministered down there. They have almost no power, there's no gas, there's no food, there's just poverty and discouragement and all of that. And so because of your faithful giving and fulfilling your pledges to the Benevolence Fund, we were able to purchase a solar generator for the church down in Cuba. And go ahead. When I heard that was going to happen, I said, we better buy a lock and chain for that solar generator too. And so it's under lock and key, but we do have pictures of the generator from Pastor George Sanchez Cruz. That's the solar generator. And he writes, greetings and blessings from the Lord, my beloved Pastor Gregg and the Mission Church. Thank you for your help. You have always been there to help us, and I appreciate it very much. This is the work. There's the proof in the pudding. We still need some protective gear, but it is already working. And he's the pastor down in Holguin, Cuba. And so thank you for not just wanting to give, but to actually be generous and give. Proverbs 22:9. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Those that are generous are living out that verse. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Now, also in Cuba, there's almost no resources, very little food. And so because of your generosity, we were able to send money down to Cuba to Pastor George, who is a high man of character, integrity. It doesn't just go by the wayside. Sometimes you give something to someone and you're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen to it. But with Pastor George, we have full assurance that he follows through on what we give him. And so we sent him some money to buy some rice and food for the church down in Cuba. And they sent us this video holding up bags of rice to say thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Generosity needs hands and feet, needs to follow through on intentions. And as much as the generous man follows through on his intentions to be generous, the stingy man knows he should be generous, but doesn't follow through. James 4:17. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and don't do it, it is sin for them. The stingy man deep down inside knows he should be generous, but doesn't follow through. And isn't it true that the stingy man isn't generous, but sure wants other people to be generous to him? Right? What, you want me to give? Someone should be giving to me. Why aren't they giving to me? We have the parable of the two sons in Matthew 21. Jesus tells this parable, and he says, there were two sons, and the father says to the sons, I need you to go out to the vineyard and do work. The first son says, I'm not going, but then thinks about it, and later he goes and does the work. The second son says, yeah, I'll go, and then doesn't go. And Jesus asks the question, which son did the father have favor with? Which son did what the father wanted? Well, of course, the first son that actually did the work. Stingy people may say the right thing and have the right intentions, but don't follow through and stay in their stingy ways. Back to our friend Nabal. I haven't forgotten about him. His wife Abigail helped mitigate the situation with David. And I'll have you read that in 1 Samuel 25. But spoiler alert, it doesn't turn out well for Nabal. Being stingy does not turn out well. You think it's going to get you ahead? Nabal dies. Spoiler alert. 1 Samuel 25. I encourage you to read that today. Being stingy is the opposite of what the Lord requires of us and what the Lord has done for us. Hello? As Marty McNeil always says, hello? Jesus was not stingy when it came to leaving heaven. His intention was to come, and then he followed through. And he lived a perfect, sinless life. And he generously gives us salvation and healing, all through his generosity. And he followed through. He said, oh, God, when he got to the garden, if there's another way to do this, I'm okay with that. And there wasn't another way. And Jesus followed through on his intentions to save us and went to the cross for us. Let's be like Christ, generous with our time, our abilities, and our resources. I'm going to ask the worship team to join me. Don't leave yet. Who are you becoming? Are you open-handed or tight-fisted? Are you open-handed or tight-fisted? Are you growing in generosity or growing in stinginess? And let me be clear that being careful with your money, counting your pennies, well, we don't really do pennies anymore, right? But counting our pennies, being excellent stewards of your finances and being frugal is not being stingy. All of us have to make wise decisions when it comes to being generous with our time, our abilities, our resources. We can't just be generous willy-nilly and give them the whole kit and caboodle. We have to make adjustments in our lives in order to live a life of generosity. But being good stewards is not an example of being tight-fisted. Being good stewards is not an excuse to be tight-fisted. You should be frugal in some areas of your life so that you can be generous when you should be generous. Years ago, I had an older woman. She was 90, so she really was older. Now that I'm getting older, it's like I'm the older woman, but she was 90, and she needed some help, and she had never been married, didn't have kids, and so I felt like I should come alongside of her. And she was so frugal. I would take her to the supermarket, and she always wanted those English cucumbers that are seedless and wrapped in the cellophane. And I'd never had them before. And so we went, and Elsie, we're walking around. Elsie, oh, I need cucumbers. Okay, here's the cucumber. It's $1.99. Elsie goes, oh no, it'll be on sale for $1.50. I'll pass on that. I'm like, it's 49 cents, Elsie. No. She wore the same dress. If you looked at a picture of her when she was 40 and a picture of her when she was 90, she was wearing the same dress, the same wool dresses. Obviously, she could fit them. Who could fit them all those years later? But she was so frugal. But then I look at her checking account, and she is giving to missions out of sight, giving. Her mailbox was full of pleas for contributions. She'd been on every mailing list because she had been generous. And so then they sell those mailing lists to other people. She was very frugal, but she was incredibly generous. That should mark us as Christians, that we say, no, I'm not going to buy that coffee. I'm going to give to missions. Or, no, I don't need the latest iPhone, but I'm going to give towards missions. Or I'm going to tithe and be generous. Being good stewards is not stingy, but give it away. Your kids don't want it. Give it away. I'm going to ask you to stand as I read 2 more scriptures, and then we'll pray and worship, and Julian will come with some announcements. 2 last scriptures for you today. 2 Corinthians 9, 10 and 11. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. And our text for today, again, Proverbs 22:6. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Lord, thank you that you were generous to us, that there's no limit to your healing power. There's no limit to your forgiveness. There's no limit to your goodness and faithfulness and trustworthiness. Thank you for being so generous to us. And Lord, I pray that we will live out being Christ-like, that we will be generous with our time, that we'll give our time to others. We thank you for all those that are serving today, whether they're in children's ministry, on the worship team, in the cafe, at the welcome center, ushering, security, production. Father, we are enjoying the fruit of their generosity and with their time. May we pick up that mantle and be generous with our time, with our abilities. We thank you for all those that went to help with Mountain View Church's Community Day yesterday. They gave of themselves to reach that community. They did face painting. They made balloon dogs. They did food. They did games. They talked conversation with people interested in about what is this new church, what's it all about. We thank you for them being generous with their abilities. And Lord, I thank you for those that are generous with their finances. Lord, may we be open-handed and not tight-fisted. May when someone thinks of us, they think, boy, they're generous. They're generous. They're frugal. They're good stewards. They're generous. May that be who we are, not just our intention, but may we follow through. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Let's worship.
Thank you for joining us online for today's service. We're truly grateful that you could be with us, and we pray that you would consider worshiping with us at 9 o'clock on Sundays or 10:45 a.m.
We offer wonderful children's programs here during both Sunday services designed to engage and teach our youngest members. Plus, on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., we have additional children's activities right here in this building.
And on Fridays, our youth meet from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., offering a space for connection and growth. If you want to stay up to date with all Mission Church ministries and events, be sure to follow us on social media and on our website, themissionchurch.online.
Thank you for joining with us today. May God bless you, and we hope to see you around the church soon.